Take our hearts and set them on fire with love for you. Amen. Amen. As I was thinking about how we would celebrate today, since we are celebrating, in addition to the seventh Sunday after Pentecost, celebrating our country's Independence Day, refrains from the Pledge of Allegiance kept coming back in my mind. I think it was because I was thinking about the flags and bringing them in. And the pledge, the way I learned to say it, which was one nation under God. And it was only when all that fight came out about whether under God should be there or not that I realized that the one I learned wasn't the original pledge. That the original pledge actually was modified 4 times, adding different things to it at different times. And it was in 1948 that the words under God were added. My mother said it was a shock to her because when they were added, because she had learned as a little girl the other way, and so it was hard for her to learn to say under God after that. Well, as I thought about it, I thought, we can get all worked up about fighting about whether those words should be in there or not. But the real question, I think, for Christians and for people of faith is not so much whether the words are included or not, but what do they mean? What does it mean for us to live as a citizen of the United States, remembering that we are a nation under God, as all nations are? Because the entire world is God's world, and everything in it is always under God. What does it mean to live our lives under God? And I think one of the things that the gospel readings remind us of today is that to live our lives under God is to always remember that no matter what we are a citizen of or a member of, we are always first and foremost a citizen of the kingdom of God. And therefore, in anything that we do, we need to do it remembering that we are a citizen of the kingdom of God as we act out our membership in a church, as we act out our citizenship in a country, as we act out our motherhood or fatherhood in a household, or our daughterhood or sonhood in relation to older parents, that we always do whatever we do as a citizen of the kingdom of God. And today's gospel tells us 2 things about living as a citizen of the kingdom of God. One thing it tells us is that that kingdom is something that is here, as well as later, but is something that is here now. That was the message that Jesus told the disciples to give to each household they came to. Whether that household received them or rejected them, it didn't matter. They were to give the same message. The kingdom of God has come near, has come near. Think about what coming near means. If I have come near to Marianne, I'm sorry, John, you can't follow me all the way out here. If I come near to Marianne, she can either touch me or ignore me, but I'm still near to her. Thank you for making that choice. And so that was part of the message that he gave to them, that the kingdom of God is already near to us. And so for us to live as a citizen of the kingdom of God is to remember that at any time, at any place, living life in that kingdom is not just something we're preparing for now so that later maybe we'll be able to do it, but it's something we're called to do now. But what does it look like then? If we're called to grab onto that kingdom that's near and live it as being a kingdom in which we live now, what does that mean? The gospel goes on to tell us another part of what that means. Because the words that each of the disciples were also supposed to give to each household was peace be with you. They were to offer the peace of God to that household. Now, what does that mean? I mean, we kind of throw that off at the peace and say, peace be with you and also with you. We hug each other and stuff like that, which was a very important part of the early Christian service to do that. Because the peace of God is central to living as a citizen of the kingdom of God. And it's peace not just in the terms of not having a conflict with each other. And it's peace not just in the terms of having some sort of warm, fuzzy feeling inside where everything's kind of smooth and nice and easy going. It's peace in what I've tried to tell you over and over and over again over the 5 years I've been here. It's that shalom, that salam. In the peace of God is the wholeness of God, the completeness of God, the big picture of God. And so what he really had those disciples doing was they were to go to each household and offer them the possibility of living their life within that wholeness, of sharing in that wholeness, of participating in that wholeness, of making their choices based on what contributes to that wholeness. That wholeness that would heal a foreigner like Naaman in the old days through the work of the prophet Elisha, even though Elisha represented a country that was an enemy of the country Naaman represented. It was a wholeness that broke down barriers, like Paul talked about in this letter we've been reading for the last several weeks. All of it is about breaking down the barriers between Jew and Gentile, male and female, and realizing the wholeness of all of us in relationship to God. And so what they were supposed to do was to go from household to household and offer this to people and to say to them, if you live this way, you will feel a wholeness. It will come to you. It may not be easy, it may not be hard, but there will be a wholeness. But even more important than that, even more important than what you feel, and I know that's hard for us to imagine in our culture, that there could be something more important than what we feel. But in the kingdom of God, there is. Even more important than that was by your own contribution to the wholeness, to the peace of God, you contribute to the big picture. And so to live as a citizen of the kingdom of God was then and is now that invitation to us to take up our part, to do whatever we can with whatever gifts and resources we have, to contribute to the wholeness of God's vision for a world in which the barriers are torn down, the broken is healed, and joy is a present reality. Some will accept that, and some will reject it. And sometimes we accept it, and sometimes we reject it. Sometimes we reject it without even knowing it. It's not that we're rejecting what it might do for us, but we're rejecting the idea sometimes that maybe we could even make any difference at all. That what I have to give is so inconsequential that how could it possibly contribute to the wholeness of a church? Or how could it possibly contribute to the wholeness of the community in which I live? Or how could it possibly contribute to the wholeness of our nation? Or how could it possibly contribute to the wholeness of God's world? We don't see how important our own little piece is. And so I'll hear people say things like, well, I don't see any use in praying about that because who am I? How's God going to hear just my little prayer? Or I'll hear people say something like, well, yeah, I know everybody's fighting about this and I could say something, but what good is it going to do if I say that? They're just going to be mad at me. So why should I do that? Or I'll hear somebody say, what good does it do to collect our aluminum cans and recycle it? In the large scope of things, what good does that do? It's just just little aluminum cans from one little bitty church. How does that make a difference? But see, what the disciples told each household was every little bit makes a difference. And to live as a citizen of the kingdom of God is to live in a way where we are willing to take whatever we have to contribute to the wholeness of God's creation in whatever way we can, wherever we are. It's like this. Imagine this. Okay, imagine that we're all off on a beach vacation together. And one of the things we're going to do is we're going to work on a puzzle, a jigsaw puzzle. It's got thousands of pieces in it. And the way we're going to do it so everybody gets to have something to do is we're going to hand out the pieces. And some people may get a lot of pieces. Maybe somebody just gets one or two little pieces, okay? And we're going to work on that. And so maybe I've got a lot of pieces and I decide that what I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out which ones are the edges. I always do that first in puzzles. Which ones are the edges? But I may not have all the edges because somebody else may have the other edge, And I could get the whole puzzle put together and be missing one little piece. because somebody decided their piece wasn't as important. It wasn't an edge. It didn't look like it had the same colors in it, and so why should they bother? And so the puzzle would be all together, but there'd be a hole in it. It wouldn't be complete. To live as a citizen of the kingdom of God is to realize that every piece matters. And if we are going to live as citizens of the kingdom of God within a nation or within a church or within a community, then we've got to remember that our piece matters. Whether it looks like it would or not. Whether it's a big piece or an edge, or maybe just a little serial number at the bottom that went at the corner somewhere in the puzzle. To live as a citizen of the kingdom of God in this world is to remember, first of all, that the whole world is a world under God, that everything and everyone in it are people and creation under God, and that the most important thing is the vision God has for the harmony of all of us, the peace of God. And so today, when we pass the peace, I invite you to think about that. That it's not just a way of saying hi to somebody, but it's a way of your offering that peace, that connection, that touch to someone else that's a part of that wholeness. It's a way of your inviting them into that wholeness, whether they'll receive it or not. It was an old rabbinical saying, Jewish rabbinical saying, obviously, that if the whole world would live the kingdom for just one day, the whole world would live the kingdom for just one day, God's kingdom would come on earth. May it be so.